will introduce it anyway. He's a scientist at PhD. He's an assistant professor at IHPME. He's in an adjunct position at York University, and he's a scientist at IHPME. He has done a lot of work on infectious disease modeling, and he's an active member of the Toronto Society as well as the Mitigation Society. And without further delay, let's start by doing what we always do and introduce ourselves. I'm Beate. I'm a health economist at THETA. And
Joanna Beate, I'm a research librarian at THETA. I might maybe take this opportunity and mention that today's round will be broadcasted live for the first time as a webinar. And if someone joins online, we might have a question coming from online, and we have a moderator, if you're welcome, who will be voicing the questions to the lecture.
I am Nader Kabul, I'm a PhD student. I'm George Thomas, the last general. I am a journal analyst at TCM. Even more decision over the
Yes, I can research as well.
Also, like an IT architect for data, and also a moderator. David Wrestler,
right. Beate?
Okay, great to be back and doing a talk. I wanted to say what Frederick didn't say is that he heavily twisted my arm like 3 days ago. so I try to prepare as good as I can. I think like in my last recipe, be patient and fine. Okay, so I'll talk today about a little bit of background on West Nile virus epidemiology, ecology, and human disease, West Nile virus interventions, and what we know about the economic impact. And then about assessing West Nile virus strategies, who, why, how, a little bit about computer simulation models, the West Nile virus model that we are building. So I should be saying this is all work in progress, so it's not finished. We are about maybe 1/3 through. So it's a lot of bits and pieces that eventually, hopefully, all fall into place. Okay, West Nile virus was first isolated in zebra species in Uganda in 1937. It came to the Western Hemisphere in 1999. There was an outbreak of encephalitis in New York. And in Ontario, it came in 2001. We could see it in birds and mosquitoes. And in 2002, we've seen it in humans in Quebec and in Ontario. Then it made its way across the country with cases in 2003 in Alberta, Saskatchewan, Manitoba, and 2009 in BC. So across the country in a really, really quick time for infectious diseases, which makes West Nile virus the now most widely distributed arbovirus in the world. So not just in Canada, also in the US, in Europe, in Africa, in many countries. Is it a huge problem in terms of number of cases? No. Between 2002 to 2014, we had around 1,000 confirmed and probable West Nile virus cases. And so you can see that the first year, 2002, was a lot of cases, around 400. And then it kind of a little bit to nothing. And then 2012 was another year where there were a lot of cases. The highest incidence rate is 3.27 per 100,000 population, which is higher than for other reported diseases that we do care about, like meningococcal disease. Now I need to talk a little bit about ecology because it's really important in the context of modeling. So you need to learn about mosquitoes and birds and everything else. So West Nile virus is maintained what's called a mosquito, bird, mosquito, and zoonotic cycle. So mosquitoes transmit to birds and birds back to mosquitoes. Mosquitoes are the primary and zoonotic vectors, but they also bridge vectors. So they're not only transmitting between birds and mosquitoes back and forth, but also to humans. So they build the bridge to humans. So they basically spread West Nile virus from the enzootic cycle to the episodic or epidemic cycle. There are two species of mosquitoes in Ontario that are primary vectors, Culex cipiens and Culex oryxworm. In terms of life cycle, basically you will know mosquitoes lay eggs that turn into larvae and then pupa and then adult mosquitoes that takes 9 to 19 days. And there are about three generations per year in Ontario over summer. Now only female Culex will seek out a blood meal. So white you and eat the blood, take out a blood meal. They need the blood to develop a batch of eggs. And then mated female Culex can overwinter in temperate regions as adults and then come back in the spring, basically. Other important ecological factors are the number and distribution of susceptible birds, the number and species of vector mosquitoes, the virus level in the mosquito population, the weather and climate, and the location of susceptible humans. So all those things are important for transmission between mosquitoes, birds, and humans. In terms of human illness, West Nile virus is in most cases asymptomatic. So 70 to 80% of those that are infected wouldn't even know it. Then some have non-neuroinvasive disease, and those are very unspecific symptoms. So that's why it's kind of difficult to diagnose as well. So it's kind of like a flu-like illness overall. And then 1 in 150 to 250 infections turn into neuroinvasive disease. So those are patients that present with meningitis, encephalitis, acute flaccid paralysis, and myelitis. They can also have gastroenteritis, generally be tired and fatigued. Those that have neuroinvasive disease are more likely to experience long-term and permanent sequelae, so mental and physical deficits. So we know that around 60% after hospitalization still require ongoing care and help. And case fatality rate is comparably high, close to 10%. Neuroinvasive disease is associated with increased age, male sex, immunosuppression, and comorbidities. Okay, intervention. Why do we worry about intervention? So there's a low seroprevalence, which basically means there's not enough protective immunity in the population to prevent outbreaks. And to prevent West Nile virus, we're focusing basically on reducing the number of West Nile virus infected mosquitoes and minimize the contact between humans and mosquitoes. So the interventions are clearly outside our traditional healthcare system. So in terms of personal protection, people are told, so you've probably seen that on TV and heard on the radio, usually over summer in Ontario, you can, public health has all this news about how to avoid mosquitoes during fighting season, right? Or wear repellent, long sleeve shirts, have your windows covered, and like all kind of other things. Remove standing water. So this all falls under personal protection promotion kind of thing. And then we have larva siting, which we do in Ontario. So those are basically insecticides that go into catch basins to kill the mosquitoes. So, so that's where all the ecology stuff comes in. So they breed in water. So they're in the catch basin, and so that's where they got the larva sites. And they do that a couple of times over summer. Then adulticiting is something we haven't done yet in Canada at all. So that would be aerial pesticides, so spray it. But like in California, they fly with little planes and spray the pesticides over large areas. In an urban area, so in Ontario, West Nile virus primarily in urban areas. They can't quite do that. They cannot do it if there's a lot of cover, a lot of trees. So they basically have trucks that could go and spray in your backyard. You can imagine how that would work. So we haven't done that yet. That wasn't the situation. But after 2002, basically every health unit has those trucks on standby. So they contract them every year. One would be around $4 million a year just to have them on standby in case. Yes, and then timing is really, really important. So if you are too early, you don't prevent it because the mosquitoes haven't really come out from the winter break yet. If you're too late, they already have recreated too much. If you spray or you put the insecticides like the day before the heavy rainstorm, it's all going to be flushed out. So timing is really, really important. Of course, so people work on human vaccines. There are several candidates under development, and phase 2 looks very promising, but it's phase 2, so you're having a real vaccine yet. Okay, economic impact. What do we know? Not a lot to almost nothing. We know a little bit about West Nile virus programs in the U.S. primarily. They studied outbreaks like in Louisiana, whereas it costs $20 million to control this outbreak, where 50% was roughly for public health response, and so that's where they go out with drugs and things and stuff, and 50% to treat West Nile virus. For Canada, we don't have anything. I just know for 3 Southern Ontario health units, they roughly budget for $2 million for mostly public education and insecticiding. How much does it cost on average somebody has a symptomatic West Nile virus infection? We don't really know much about it either. So in the U.S., there was a study where they thought it was around $7,500 for non-neuro-invasive disease. And then there's a whole range for different syndromes within the neuroinvasive. For Canada, we have no cost at all. We did a quick just checking the ICD-10 code for West Nile virus infection and what the hospitalization costs were on average around $62,000. So that was really big and early, and it's probably right. But so that's all we have. Okay, so what motivated us to look into this? Not even though it's not a huge problem. We have seen West Nile virus cases in Canada since 2002, so it's been around, and I think the general agreement is that it's here to stay, so it's not going to go away. We still have outbreaks despite doing all this already. So we do public education and we do larva sighting. We still have the 25 outbreaks. Why? Climate change is another thing. People are very worried about climate change and that the vector is spreading further north, and that we see more cases. And of course, we spend quite a bit of money on West Nile virus prevention and having those trucks ready. So that was actually a question that came from the ministry. Like, should we have those trucks on standby? We've had them on standby for over 10 years. We never really needed them, but nobody wants to put us up. So it's that money well spent. And so we wrote a grant, and we got funded to look at the cost effectiveness of West Nile virus intervention strategies by using a computer simulation model. So this is the team. It's 19 people now. It keeps growing, I think. So it's Beate from York University and myself. And then it's a very multidisciplinary team, like having clinicians, biostatisticians, entomologists, so like public health practitioners, lab people, kind of like covering all the bases. We also have collaborators from public health units, from PHAG and the CDC, kind of being linked in what's going on in the US, who have been struggling with that for many more years than we do. Okay. So the goal of this study is to evaluate the cost effectiveness of West Nile virus mitigation strategies using 3 public health units, that's Halton, Peel, and Toronto, of Southern Ontario as the base population. And our specific objectives are to predict mosquito abundance, West Nile virus and West Nile virus transmission, to estimate health and economic consequences, and to determine the comparative effectiveness, economic impact, and cost effectiveness of West Nile virus mitigation strategies. Okay, how is the model going to do that? Here's the model. Anybody of you played in cities? Pekka is laughing, even Marita, I did. Some people know it. It's like the older generation. Like, that's the only computer game I've ever played in my life. Yes. Anyway, so that's a Theta. And that's essentially what we do, right? Like, we want to recreate our environment with everything that's really important to address the problem at hand. So, what's important? It's important to model different environments. So we have an urban environment, like Toronto. But we have more rural environments, and we have our big north in Ontario. So forests, relatively very low or no population. We need to look at weather, temperature, precipitation, and of course, the three species that are involved in that. So mosquitoes, birds, and humans. Yeah, not to scale, you don't need to worry about it. Okay, so in more technical terms, that's how it looks like. It's a multi-scale simulation model. Multi-scale means we use different methods for each of the components. So I'm going to start down here with the blue one. So that's basically a statistical prediction model, looking at mosquito abundance, modeling the mosquito life cycle based on weather, so temperature, precipitation, land use, and other factors. So once we know how many mosquitoes are around, we need to model transmission, the orange part. So that's the infectious disease dynamic transmission model. So we look at transmission between mosquitoes and birds, and then mosquitoes to humans. Mosquitoes also infect horses, but they are dead and hosts, we don't care about it. They're not important for any other country. And once a human person is infected, then we have our disease history model. We all are, right? So you're infected, symptomatic, non-new or new, all this. We are not looking at alternate modes of transmission, especially in the beginning. There was quite a bit of work looking at transmission via blood products, so we're not going to look at that. So in terms of geography, I already mentioned we're looking at Portland, Nile, and Toronto. We chose those three, A, because they're connected, B, because we wanted to have a mix of urban centers like Toronto and more urban rural kind of mix of landscapes like Portland and Nile. The three areas are also among those that are most affected in Ontario. And York University already has developed prediction and West Nile virus risk assessment model for Peel. So we can build on that, what we have done for Peel, and extend it to the other two health units. For the overall model, we then will divide each health unit's geographic data into smaller areas, which is basically to be based on census tracts, and I will talk about that a little bit more. But in a way, so that each area is homogeneous in terms of West Nile virus transmission, because it's very, very context specific, and the areas are fairly small. Like mosquitoes don't fly further than 2 kilometers. And depending on the landscape, it might be very different in regions that are even very close. So we want them to be homogeneous in terms of West Nile virus transmission characteristics that include temperature, precipitation, land use, population density, and socioeconomic variables. And we also want to make sure that each collaboration has at least one mosquito trap, because that provides data that we can use for calibrating and validating the model for mosquito abundance. Okay, so I'm going to talk a little bit about each of those three models. The first one is the mosquito abundance or life cycle model. So basically, this model is species that are relevant for West Nile virus, we combined everything that was aquatic life stage. So from egg to larva and pupa, so that all happens in the water. So we just combine it to one stage. So we have one in the water, one outside the water. And I talked about it already, so driven by weather and geography. And in this part of the model is where our intervention of larva fighting will be displayed. So different interventions are happening in different. I'm talking a little bit about mosquito data. How did we actually even come up with mosquito life cycle, and how do we know we're doing the right thing? So we have had mosquito surveillance for hawk and tail and fawn in all the regions from 2005 to 2014. So what they do from June, mid-June to late September, early October, is they're putting out those traps. Each health unit does that. So it's the one on the right. So they have some light. Mosquitoes go in there in the night. There's a fan that pushes them down, where they collect basically mosquitoes. And they do that once a week, the same day. I think they always do it on Monday, something like that, in the same spot. And so the data they collect is from that spot, also latitude and longitude, so we know exactly where those traps are. And then, of course, mosquitoes, they are counted, and they're sent to the lab to see how many of them have West Nile virus in them. And then that all goes into a database. So what the data we have are that what's relevant for mosquito identification. So for each trap, we know the numbers of mosquitoes by species per night for each week. And testing results of how many have West Nile virus. And it's also has related to the weather database. So we have all that. And so that's the map called mosquitoes, Lonzo, and all the red dots are mosquitoes. Okay, now we need to overlay that one with land use and land cover data. Because we want to know whether it's urban or rural and if there's a lot of water or not. So we're using Landsat data, so that's satellite data. You can get in a fairly small resolution. And with that, we can classify the diverse geography within health units. So there are 6, or actually, I think there are even more than the 6 categories. So commercial, government, open area, forest, residential, resource. I think there's also agricultural, forest, and like whatever else. So there are all kinds of different categories. So we get that for our 3 regions and weather data from the Pearson Airport. So this is a map that shows land use in the 3 regions. So basically everything that's changed is urban or built area. The yellowish is agricultural, forestry, and then on the top, the black is forest, more or less. So there's some other little things in between, but that's more or less it. And then all the green dots again are our tracks. Okay, so now what the next step that we wanted to do was put it into areas that make sense, right? In terms of climate, in terms of land use, that we have at least one mosquito trap, and following the census line, so that we can later link it to admin data too, where we get all our health data from. So that was the idea. So what we did was looking at clustering techniques, which are typically employed to simulate patterns among sub-regions with similarities in weather conditions, geography, and that affect mosquito reproduction and activity. So the specific method was K-means clustering, which is popular for cluster analysis and data mining. So that's something York did. You have a lot of experience with this kind of stuff. I'm not really that much, so still learning about that. And so what we aim to is to partition all the observations we have into K-sets, so to minimize the visiting clusters from upstream. And so we're using our mosquito data from the mosquito database for 6 years, and also all the geographic factors that we have to come up with clusters where mosquitoes abundance is likely to be very similar. And so that's pretty much how it looks like. So we have 3 different types of clusters with low, moderate, and high mosquito abundance. So the low one, you can see all the way up in in the north of the Health Unit. They also from right around here. The blue and the red ones are fairly mixed, which is the mono and the home. That's where you can see how specific this is for fairly small areas, really. So you can't just take out a big chunk and say this is low mosquito abundance, but this is high. So it varies quite a bit. And so we use those ones to predict mosquito abundance. So this is something we worked on in previous years, where the black one looks just at mosquito abundance, and the red lines are risk index. That's calculated based on how many mosquitoes are there and what proportion has actually West Nile virus. As you can imagine, you could have a lot of mosquitoes but no West Nile virus, or a few mosquitoes but every single one has West Nile. So it's ultimately takes into account how many actually have West Nile. And so that matches pretty well the observed versus the simulated data. And this is just for 1 year. And this was in June this year. And so that's the average for previous years. We see average 2015, that was June 2020. So the line would have been what we did here before what we have seen. So that's how the abundance modeling. Okay. So once we've got all that figured out, then we can use this and feed it into a transmission model. So transmission model, we need everybody who is involved, which are our mosquitoes, the birds, and of course humans. There are 2 bird species that are predominantly involved in West Nile virus transmission, so we're going to focus on those ones. And for humans, we want to do something that's age structure for short, where we have younger children, school age children, adults, and older adults. So that constrains our transmission, how much time you spend outdoors, but also for comorbidity. So we have different age groups for them. And then West Nile virus transmission is determined by contact rate. So contact rate between mosquitoes and birds, but also between mosquitoes and humans. Infectiousness and duration of that infectiousness between mosquitoes and birds. And susceptibility for mosquitoes, birds, and humans. And of course, again, we will need to look at weather in terms of mosquito abundance behavior and mortality. So depending on temperatures, mosquitoes behave in a different way. So when it's a little warmer, they bite more, and when it's colder, so all this kind of stuff. When it's too hot, they die, and it's too cold, they die. And of course, West Nile virus incubation period. And so for this part of the model, in terms of intervention, we would be looking at adulticiding, personal protection in humans so that they don't get affected, and vaccines. And vaccines in both. So when we talk about human vaccines, there are also development for vaccines in birds. And this is going to be a stochastic compartmental SIR type of model, which basically means somebody can be susceptible, infected, or then recover. And in this case, we have that for the 3 species, right? We have mosquitoes that are susceptible and can turn infected. We have birds that are susceptible and can become infected and then recover. So this is the bird-mosquito transition cycle. And then, of course, we can move to humans, which will susceptible and become infected and then recover. So that's the basic model structure. And that's where we kind of working on right now, so I don't really have anything like ready for this course. Human disease history. So it's planning to model the population of the 3 health units. So doing agent-based modeling, 3 million individuals representing the 4 million individuals living in the health unit. So hot and here, the entire health unit one, so scale it down by half. Trying to find scale it down enough so that it runs, but not too much so that it still makes sense. Each individual has characteristics that are relevant for West Nile virus infection and disease severity, so age, sex, comorbidity. And specifically, we're looking at cancer, diabetes, hypertension, alcohol abuse, renal disease, and whether or not an individual is immunocompromised. We're looking at acute disease and long-term sequelae, and the probability of an individual being in any one of those states, for example, symptomatic neuroinvasive death. as determined by that individual source. So that's pretty much how it looks like. So before people are symptomatic, we have asymptomatic, symptomatic. The symptomatic could be neuroinvasive or not. If you have neuroinvasive disease, you have any of those, meningitis in isolation, encephalitis, encephalitis, acute lactic paralysis, or AFC in combination with the other. Now, if you have meningitis, you may or may not be hospitalized. You may or may not have sequelae. So we differentiate those into physical functional sequelae, neuropsychological or cognitive sequelae, or a mix of both. Of course, you could die of retinovirus, other causes, or recover and become sick. For non-neuroinvasive disease, a little more complicated. So they may or may not be hospitalized or have some other healthcare context or no healthcare context at all. They also can develop sequelae that are physical, psychological, or and again they can die. So that's about the okay. Now I think to me that's the fun part. How do we parameterize all that stuff from retinovirus abundance to transmission to human disease and for our economic evaluation to quality and cost and all this kind of stuff. So there's a huge list of data sources we're using. I'm going to focus on some of them. So we're going to use admin data. We're using public health surveillance data, different data sets. We're doing a costing project, and we're using clinical data. So I'm going to talk about those 5. You all know what ISIS data are. So it's all the health admin data held up at ISIS, clinical, includes all our healthcare resource use. And we use ISIS data to build comorbidity profiles. So we use the different cohorts and data we have at ISIS, so we can use comorbidity to build those profiles by age, sex, duality, income region. So we haven't quite figured out all the details yet, looking at what the smallest unit we can possibly have. And so linking it basically to those subregions that we have already identified by census stuff. So this is underway. We started that one, but haven't finished yet. Another data set I want to talk about is the rapid risk factor surveillance system. So this is a survey, a monthly survey that's conducted by participating health units. Asking them 100 people on health behavior, beliefs, and attitudes. And the data is compiled up at yours. And they have different modules kind of depending on priorities. So West Nile virus was included from 2008 to 2002 to 2008. And so 2008 participation was great. So we're only going to use data from 2002 to 2007. And so for here, we have looked at the data already. So they asked about personal and household protection. And so that we will be used basically in our model to inform West Nile virus transmission. So this is personal protection, and that's what people reported. Use for challenge is outspeed, use for challenge with speed, covered up with clothing, limited outdoor activity, and avoided area access mosquitoes. Mosquito is around 50% of the population. What unfortunately we don't know is how many use how many. Like, as people would use a combination of those most likely. There are other studies that talk about like how many, and I think it's like 2 to 3 protective measures that people use on average. Also, a question around mosquito prevention around the house. So, are there any containers that like water outside? Does water stay in these containers for more than a week? Do you have any windows door open for ventilation in the summer? Do they have screens? If the screens have holes, do you fix them? So those are the questions that are in the survey. And so it seems like people don't care much about the water. I think we are easy to do. But so everybody, or most people seem to have screens and use them. Now, another data set is ICIS, which is the Integrated Public Health Information System. So I'm not sure how many of you know about this. So this is basically a reportable disease data set. So all the reportable diseases, including West Nile virus, get entered into that data. Right? So if you go to your physician and you have West Nile virus or you diagnose it Lyme disease or hepatitis, they will call the public health unit and they will follow up and enter all your data into that system. The only problem is that so fields differ by disease, so there's a core component, which all the demographics, stuff like that, is the same for everybody, but then depending on disease, the fields in the data set are different, and completeness varies. So there are a few fields that are mandatory, but not all are mandatory. A lot of them are, you can enter the data or not. And so depending on, I think, I guess the resources the health unit has, this is building really well on that level. So we use data from ICIS for 2002 to 2014, and we've done some initial analysis looking at confirmed and probable cases. So those were around the 1,000 cases in total. And so we will use this data for disease history, calibration, validation. So West Nile virus cases, we're just looking at the total number of cases quantity of all. So definitely among those health units that have the greatest proportion of cases. Demographics are very similar to what's reported in the literature, around 50 years of age. Median age was 53. Compared to Ontario population, where the median age is 40, so it's a little bit of an older population. Of course, there's also a reporting bias, right? So the asymptomatic ones you don't get. And among the non-neuroinvasive, there is a lower probability that they make it into this type of data set. West Nile virus cases by year, I showed you that earlier already, so you have number of cases over time. And then among those reported, we have sequelae, but that's really not a very good, it's not very well reported. It's only reported for 198, so for 800, but we don't even know whether they had any or not. So it's biased, and I think that will be something that we'll get data from. Okay, cost data. Those who know me know already what's going to come. So there's another cost of illness analysis using health admin data. Similar to our other studies, so we do an incidence-based, pathogen-based approach. So what that means, we want to know how much the average case of West Nile virus is going to cost us. And you split it up by syndrome and stuff. But so from infection to death. We're using a matched cohort design. We identify our infected subjects in laboratory data. So that's different to most of the admin data studies. Right, so West Nile virus, there is no code for physician visits, only for hospitalization. So we need to look back into the lab data and then match them to unaffected subjects randomly from the population to look at attributable healthcare costs using the phase of care approach. So in terms of identifying infected subjects, we extracted test level data from multiple databases at the Public Health Ontario Laboratory. So databases and paper requisition forms. So it's amazing how much data is still stored just in paper format. You kind of go there and you get the boxes in the warehouse and you take out the requisition form and you type it all into some data set, which is a lot of fun to do for a day. So we went there actually with 5 people and we did just that, going through boxes and typing it all in. Okay, so we got all this data for West Nile virus and other flaviviruses that may cross-react in patients tested for West Nile virus and positive tests. And those that can get similar clinical presentations to West Nile virus. And so we extracted data from 1999, so just before the first cases basically came to Ontario to 2014, and we had around 280,000 tests. So now what we need to do with those tests is roll it up to patient levels with handling tests. ICIS data, we make patients, right? We're worried about patients, not tests. So we applied case definition based on infectious disease protocol, and then we can distinguish between confirmed cases, 35%, probable cases, 46%, and possible cases, 19%. And so we had around 2,000 patients after we had rolled it all up from test level to sample level and then patient level. And we have linked it to IHPME data. So we've done the deterministic linkage, and that was really good. 91% were able to link because they had valid health code numbers. And we are still working on the other 200 or so, trying to link them probabilistically. And once that is done, we can actually do the testing. So we haven't sorted with the testing side yet. And I think that's the last big topic I want to talk about, is quality of life data. So they really want to describe health-related quality of life over time in patients with West-Nile infection. There's no published data, so we've done a systematic review of sequelae and quality of life. There's not a single one. However, we are lucky that Mosquitoes had actually done a study looking at prognosis after West-Nile infection. And so that was a Canadian cohort of adults that were tested positive for West Nile, and they were classified in neuroinvasive and non-neuroinvasive disease. And so all of the testing was conducted at provincial laboratories. So then they went back to their physician and asked the physician to recruit the patient. And they used SS36 to look at prognosis. So I think you all are familiar with SS36. The key limitation is that obviously it's a descriptive instrument. It's not based on preferences, right? So it's not, can't just use the value to do utility. Luckily also, there's now an algorithm, I think it's been around for a little while, but not for very long, which is called SF60, developed by the University of Sheffield, where they use standard errors to transform SF36 into utility value. So we use the algorithm to look at mean utility scores over time and summary utility scores. So that was Margaret's original study. So they had 367 patients, which was the target population, included 154 into their analysis. And then over time, patients dropped out of the study. So after 1 year, they had 59. So that's important to keep in mind with what I'm going to show you now. So from 154 went down to 59 over the 1 year time period. Just put up the demographics in total and neuroinvasive versus non-neuroinvasive. Generally, it's very similar to what you find in the literature and to what we found in our reportable disease data in terms of demographic, like mean age around 50. Around equal proportion between male and female overall. However, we know male is being male as a respective for neuroinvasive, and that you can see that. So it's 42% female and the neuroinvasive, 53% in the non-neuroinvasive. And we had around 11 months of follow-up on average, and then there's a list of comorbidities. So this is the SF36 over time, so it's not a utility yet. So the blue dotted line all around is the Canadian norm, so we have all the different of the SF36. Then in the middle is what they had at baseline, so patients when they were diagnosed with West-Nile for the different dimensions, and then the green one after. The lighter green one after 3 months, and just the black line after 1 year. We are still working on role emotion and role system. That's what we got. We think there's something wrong, so we're working with Mark to kind of sort out whether there was something in the database or, what happened. Doesn't really seem to make sense that it's ridiculously low and everything else seems to kind of come back to normal. And this is one that's converted into utilities. So red is the neuroinvasive, black the non-neuroinvasive. And so they took low increasing over time. And as you would expect, neuroinvasive just a little bit worse than non-neuroinvasive. And we transformed that into do the current long-term utilities for it. So the first thing is just the average post 12 months, and the area under the curve is just the area under the curve. So for overall, for neuroinvasive and for non-neuroinvasive, and again, as we may expect, neuroinvasive, fairly little work. And of course, the final thing, we're also working on a literature first. So we based literature review. We based it on something that's done published earlier this year on long-term sequelae and quality of life. And just taking it broader to basically populate our model. And I think there's not much that's ongoing work. 3,000 articles, right now 77 in our center. And primarily looked at data related to hospitalization, recovery, and mortality, and factors that are related to developing neuroinvasive disease and mortality. So basically using this to parameterize everything else in a model where we don't have primary data. Okay, bringing it all together. So once we have, I guess, the entire model, so one of the things you want to do is look at the time period from 2002 to 2013 to kind of look at very general conclusion, like what seems to work or what doesn't seem to work and why, and see if we can optimize the timing of intervention. So I think one thing I didn't mention, we will also work very closely with the health units to get like everything about the program. How do they roll it out? How is the timing every single year? And what are the costs and the resources used to do that? So when you see it like kind of looking back, you can optimize what has been done. And then the second part is to look forward and trying to build set of prediction tools that are almost real time, but also look a little bit further than like the next 5 days. So if you can imagine, if they do want to be reactive to something happening, maybe there's some mosquitoes replicating really a lot, there's a lot of vector-wise going to be around. So under those type of intervention storage, there's obviously a time delay. They want to know that much earlier than just like, yeah, in 3 days, you're probably going to see a lot of cases. But it's like a week, 2 weeks, maybe 3 weeks out. Okay, in terms of limitation, of course, it's everything that's generally related to modeling. We have to make simplifying assumptions. We have limited data, especially on vector virus transmission, which is very crucial. So that's a bit of a problem. I think the other thing that's really tricky is transferability. It's highly context specific. So it's very specific to Ontario, to that particular landscape or health unit. So what we're trying to do to get around it is to export like key scenarios. So based on ecological factors. So in an urban area, and it's like this, this, and this, then that's going to work. We also limited ourselves in terms of scope, because it's the first project of this type we're doing. So we don't look at geographic threats, spatial movement, or within parameters. And we are not including right now climate change and extreme weather. However, we set it up in a way so that we can do that later. Okay, so why do we do it? Well, we want to understand what's going on. We want to improve vector virus response in Ontario. But we also, like on an academic note, we just really wanted to find out. And it's kind of a blueprint for other similar diseases. So everything that's happening within the One Health context. And we have started looking at Lyme disease, which is similar in the way that it's transmitted by ticks. So we need to look at the same type of data like the ecology, the vector, and human disease. So it's kind of a blueprint for other things. And also looking at what I'm really interested in is multi-sectoral intervention. So it's not everything right in the healthcare system. For vector virus, still most of it is in public health. But for Lyme disease already, it's a little bit different. So you can look at agriculture and other interventions, or other sectors where the interventions may actually be in terms of prevention. And I think that's it. Okay.
Thank you very much, and I'm sorry for putting you in the spot, but I'm happy I did it because it's very So I have a small question and then we can go. Have you thought of the externalities of this intervention? I mean, I assume that reducing mosquito interaction and human interaction might have other externalities except from the wetlands files to you.
Not for this one. I think this is as complex as I can handle it. So yes, there are other externalities, but I think we try very consciously to keep it as small as we can and being realistic for one thing, and then expand things like that. Yes. Okay. So of course, if you do if you spend less time outdoors, you also less effort for other diseases like Lyme disease rates. So you're not outside. Can't get a heat stroke, you're not outside. You know, that kind of other things.
Very interesting model. I just wonder whether you know that when New York University people implement the model, you think how do they handle the movement of the population? This is very hard to handle. For example, people are traveling to the countryside during weekend and then come back to the city. So how do they handle these parts?
We can't do that. Like I think it's really too much. But so that's where the smaller sub-regions come in, right? So whether you go to another sub-region on the weekend or not.
So basically,
yeah, they're like staying within them.
Very, very. I guess I'm just worried about your ambition. Well, no, it's just, you know, I haven't seen a model that brings in so many distant sources of data. Yes, my only concern is to so many things that are modeling real world surveillance data is complicated, and there are so many complicated visual pieces. I mean, I have seen how to model. Any anxiety going on?
Occasionally, I do have anxiety, but all in all, I actually feel quite confident, and I think the further we go along, the more confident I feel about it. So one reason for that is that Europe has done the prediction modeling already, and they've done it pretty well, and they're fine-tuning it. So they kind of keep going step by step. They started with temperature and rain, now we add land use, and like all this other stuff. And we actually just had an investigator meeting like a month ago, and that was really good. The transmission modeling is going along really well too, and our the disease modeling, which pretty much worked out using the last programming and then improving the data that goes into it. So right now we're putting a lot of work in the data. So the three pieces are what I would say like in a reasonably good shape. What does give me a little bit anxiety, so it's like how we all put it together, and we discussed that and we've been thinking about it a lot. So it's going to be done all at work. For example, like we programmed the whole disease model right now in PhD to kind of figure it all out. But they will reprogram it so that it's one smooth model. They have a whole army of programmers and mathematicians sitting down. They have our own high performance computing. So all of that is there. So the bits and pieces are all there. Or the data sources have been all identified. So things are like on the way. So I'm reasonably confident. Yeah. Some anxieties I think, or some. I think the thing I'm mostly worried about is around effectiveness of those interventions. The data isn't really that great. It works for modeling, I think, but it's not fantastic. So I was involved in a task group that was organized by THETA. So we did a systematic review on prevention strategies, and so I think that's really the biggest part. But that feeds directly into the model of different ways. And we have many data points. That's the thing where we can validate it again. The mosquito data and quite more. Yeah. It's primarily they're not. We're still working on that. But that's the only study. And there's no utility study. So there's no published utility data on West Nile. So what you yes, so that I was just gonna say, like look at healthy, like can look at that.
All right. Thank you again very much. Thank you.